We're joined by Chief Goddy Uwazuirike, who is a legal practitioner and was a delegate at the just concluded national conference. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you.
Well, looking at some of those recommendations, when they eventually scale through from the Joint Committee of the National Assembly, you have people wondering, okay, well, now that they've approved this one, what's going to happen to those recommendations for the national conference? Does it mean that, well, that may just be kept in abeyance while we all stick with this amendment? Because when these ones will now be sent to the state assemblies for their own contribution and possible ratification. So if that goes through the state houses of assembly in the country, it becomes law.
Yes, the amendment of the Constitution being done by the National Assembly at the moment has been on for about 3 years. It was on for about 2.5 years before the confab came up. So while in the confab, we knew that the National Assembly was also doing something, but our own encompassed all the ones they are doing now and the ones we think they may not even include. For instance, the creation of new states, the modalities altered, amendments of local government laws, removal from the revenue sharing group. These are some of the things we knew we had to go further. Because we are coming from outside, so to say, we had a very wide range of operation. Unlike these people at the National Assembly who are doing their own, which they had been doing before we came on board. And now that our own is there, our own must await, I believe, the next legislative assembly. If this one they are doing succeeds, the modalities for even looking at our own recommendations will be based on this their own now. One of which is the president does not need to sign.
That's part of what's...
That's part of the new one now.
Okay.
They are specific that the president does not need to sign. Whereas the existing constitution left it somehow. Called it, as far as we knew, amendment of a constitution is another bill. And all bills are signed by the president. But the new one now says no need for Mr. President's signature.
Because it caused some sort of argument about
there are a lot of arguments. And then they had to say, well, they have nothing to lose. So Mr. President signed. So they signed. Meanwhile, those who were out to stop the last amendment were getting ready to go to court. So they took the wind off their sail by getting Mr. President to sign. But they're saying from now on, all amendments are done by the National Assembly, in fact, by the legislature only. The executive has no input. That's what they're saying now.
But if you look at some of the recommendations here, the highlights of those adopted provisions, which, because I remember, I think the conference also spoke about the positions of Attorney General and Ministers of Justice. Now, that argument had always raged. Some had thought, no, let's remove it, separate the offices. One is political, one should be purely professional. But what was the conversation, and now that they've got this?
Well, the present amendment actually is in the same line. In the confab, we insisted on clear-cut separation, one of which is that the Attorney General of the Federation shall be an independent person, yes, nominated by Mr. President, confirmed by the Senate for a specific period, not subject to directions of the President. The Minister of Justice will be there as a member of the cabinet, attending all the meetings, attending all party conventions, being like any other minister. But the Attorney General will wake up in the morning and decide to prosecute the minister. In the present arrangement, all of them are dining and whining on the same table. So you don't expect him to get up and say, you, the Minister for Transport, are hereby indict. That kind of thing. So that camaraderie atmosphere will not be there if the Attorney General is not whining and dining with them. As it is in the federal level, so it is also in the state level, where the Attorney General does not wake up in the morning and wait on Mr. President or the governor. Sir, what do we do? He will say, kill the matter. So the people of Nigeria actually need somebody who will now stand up and say, I am for the people, not necessarily for the government. Yes, I'm not against the government, but I'm here to protect their legal interest.
You know, if you look at it, a whole lot of argument leading up to this whole constitution amendment. First, that it was handed down to us by the military, and we had people talking about it back and forth. But these are the main issues we're looking at coming down. But if you look at some of these issues, it goes beyond some of those highlighted already. If you look at it critically, we have a whole lot that is even almost 100 that have been tinkered with, but these are just the major ones we're looking at now. So, for instance, it now guarantees that additional states can be created, looking at Section 3, subsection 1. Let's see if we can look at some of these one after the other. We'll get into the local government independent candidacy. State creation, how important is that to us as a people now?
Well, you know, the world is tending towards liberalizing conditions instead of tightening conditions. I think the very first 1999 Constitution was more into stricter control of people. So they're now relaxing. One of which is that if you ask the average Yoruba man in Kwara, he will tell you he wants Kwara to be a pure Yoruba state. If that is to happen, what happens? How will they now separate themselves from the Fulanis who have been ruling them for some time? So it is that natural desire by people to have the state of their own that is covered by all these provisions about additional states. You talk of the Southeast and the shortchanging by one state. It's a natural desire. Yes, even when I've been going through, since I came back from Confab, the demand for Savannah State. Yes, it's scaled through. Savannah State today is the area being occupied by Boko Haram. All those areas from Damboa to Askira, Oba, and so on and so forth, all of them are under occupation. And are all the non-Kanuri areas. So the non-Kanuri area of Borno is asking for another state called Savannah. And he was surprised at a number of Christians and minority tribes. Many of them have the MS, like the Askirama of Askira. But those he's ruling, many of them are Christians, and they have been coexisting. All they know is that they are ruled by the Kanuris continuously. So they want their own state. You cannot go there and tell them, don't take your own state. The whole of southern Kaduna, you know what is happening between them and the Fulanis. You go and tell them, shut up, don't ask for any state. They find it funny. Or you Idoma people who know that unless they have their own upper state, they cannot move. So the demand for state is a natural aspiration of all.
Well, it also guarantees that more local governments can be created. And you recall the argument then, it was even the first time we saw that when Bola Tinubu, the governor, then created more local government until that argument came back and forth, even though legal minds then had to say, look, they had all the rights to do all of that. They were now made local council development areas. But with this amendment, they say you can go ahead and create more local governments.
Yes, the existing constitution says you have to do so at the local level, but you must also take it to national level because the constitution has a list of all the local governments. So as far as Lagos State is concerned, the number of local governments Lagos State has is as it is in the constitution. But then, in practice, they have their 57 LCDAs. So if I'm taking a court action, am I going to take a court action against an LCDA? I can't. Supreme Court made it quite clear that it is incurred. In other words, it is not yet complete. It's still in process. But this new constitution, either the one being amended now or the one we proposed, stated clearly, well, the one we proposed stated clearly that the creation of a local government is the affair of the state. Straightforward. And also removed the list of local governments from the Constitution. And says you are free to create, you are free to reduce, but autonomy of the local government must be guaranteed. In other words, if you are not an elected local government, you cannot get any revenue from the state. That's our own, because we removed them from sharing national funds. But this one that is being amended, as far as I'm concerned, is still there. But they insisted there will be no revenue if you are not an elected local government. I agree completely with that. Because the governors see local governments as the post, side posts The money that comes is put in a special account. They tell the chairman, how much did you receive? 300 million. Oh yeah, sign, you have collected 300 million. Meanwhile, one special assistant in charge of local government affairs will collect cash of maybe 90%. So when you hear some governors chartering jets, this is where the money is coming from. But we said no. The autonomy, legislative, financial, administrative autonomy is guaranteed.
Which is part of what they
Part of what they're saying here. Because those local governments are bleeding, they are suffering. Forget the title chairman of local government, just an empty one. You are more or less somebody who is an appendage of the governor.
But the tricky part of this is, if this, by the time it gets to the state houses of assembly, what if they then say, or the governors or some people prevail on them saying, no,
this is where,
we don't want this.
as James Hadley Chess would have said in those days, this is the way the cookie crumbles. Believe you me, the local governments will not approve any local government autonomy. They will not. The governors are the ones controlling the state houses of assembly. And as far as they're concerned, those in the National Assembly are jealous of them. So they want to take away their milk pots. Unless the outgoing governors, those who are about to leave office, will gang up and say, well, let's stop the incoming governors from taking this money. If they do that, local government autonomy will be guaranteed. But believe you me, anything the governor does not approve, the House of Assembly will not pass unless a state like Nasarawa. All the others wake up in the morning and wait on the governor to say, Your Excellency, what do we do?
How important is this move? Because before now, there was the argument that it will be abolished, that we were going to do away with the local government.
No, that is misinformation. Or rather, that's disinformation.
But you also heard that.
Yeah, those who were against the confab,
and it was wrong,
released two damaging pieces of information. One was that we were out to abolish local government. Second one was that we were being paid 4 million naira. We kept on explaining to them. Even the chairman of the Nigerian Labour Organization brought his own and showed everything. Brought all the drafts and showed them. They still didn't believe. Up till today, the local government workers still believe we have abolished local government. It's not true. Nobody wants to abolish local government. It's a very key component of any administration. Because they're the ones closest to the grassroots. Even though these days, some chairmen end up living in a hotel throughout their tenure, instead of living among the people.